Manga is a form of comic books that originate from Japan and is a major source of entertainment for not only the people of Japan, but globally. Manga accounts for 40% of all books and magazines sold in Japan. In 2018, the industry was worth 441.4 billion yen, roughly $3.96 billion, to now being listed at about 612 billion yen or $5.6 billion. The growth in the industry can be attributed to various innovations in the way that manga is consumed and how easily accessible the medium has become to your average person due to globalization. Furthermore, the exponential growth in popularity of various anime in the West such as Dragon Ball Z, Yu Yu Hakusho, Cowboy Bebop, Naruto, and Bleach to name a few, all help shine a bright light on the lesser known manga and anime in Japan. But this video is not about explaining how the manga industry grew to its current level, but rather, this is an explanation of how the manga industry works. In this video, I will break down the manga business, looking closely at how manga come about, how they are marketed in magazines, how they then transcend the manga format into anime and more, and the importance of copyright to this system, the manga artist, and the publisher. Now, before we dive into the manga business, let's first gain an understanding of an important concept that is used in business, and that is the windowing strategy. The windowing strategy is used by creating a form of media and releasing it in different ways, where each type of release targets a different kind of customer, that being either customers that are willing to pay the least up to those who are willing to pay the most. Let me use an example to show you guys what this means. Take a popular movie like Harry Potter. It is first released in cinemas where large groups of fans pay to watch it once. They are paying the most relative to the amount of times that they get to see the movie, that being once. Months later, the movie is released as a DVD, and now the customer can watch it as many times as they please. This is followed by pay-per-view releases and broadcasting the movie on television. You can see that with each new introduction of the movie, the customer has to accept certain conditions like waiting for a certain period of time, or having to watch ads, and more. With comics and other books, the windowing strategy can be used to transform works across various formats. For example, a comic book or a manga can get turned into a movie, cartoon or anime, video game, and merchandise. But the difference between the manga and Western comic book industries are that the manga industry targets the customers willing to pay the least first, whereas the comic book industry does the opposite. To understand this, let us now look at the manga industry's practices. From Shueisha to the Good Smile Company, there are about 6 main manga publishers in Japan, and in turn, these 6 companies own a total of 54 manga magazines between them. The popular one that the majority of manga fans know is the weekly Shonen Jump, that is owned by Shueisha and houses many popular series such as One Piece, Demon Slayer, My Hero Academia, Black Clover, and Jujutsu Kaisen to name a few. Knowing the level of popularity that all these stories hold, one would assume that those magazines take in a lot of money, but this is far from the truth. In fact, manga magazines do not even attempt to make profit. We will use the weekly Shonen Jump as an example. A copy of the magazine is priced at $10 and it has chapters from 21 different manga series in a given week barring breaks. When you think about it, each of the 21 manga series are created by an independent author. So does this $10 split among them? The answer is no, and the business model of the manga magazines explains why. As magazine companies do not plan to make profits from the sale of the magazine, they keep the production costs as low as possible. To do this, they use recycled paper and black and white ink to illustrate the manga. With the level of competition in the manga industry and the fact that kids and their tastes in entertainment continue to widen, the prices tend to remain low. So with this understanding, how do those companies make their money? They do so by selling collections. A collection is of a specific series, for example, the One Piece collection. For a series to get a collection, it must develop a large enough fan base that is willing to spend money on that specific series. This is where the main purpose of magazines come into play. A magazine acts primarily as a means to advertise a series. They first target a specific demographic and put series together based on traits that the specific demographic will gravitate towards. So say you buy the Weekly Shonen Jump for One Piece, My Hero Academia, and Black Clover. You continue reading and you discover Jujutsu Kaisen, Chainsaw Man, Kaiju, and Mashle. 4 more series that you may become a fan of in the future, thus allowing you to join the fan base for all of them. This is what the magazines are hoping for, so that with this, they'll be able to sell collections for each of those series. They usually reprint those stories in a better quality, in both hardcover and paperback formats, with the intention of customers owning multiple versions of the same series. This is a very successful business model because, first, they do not pay much at the beginning to get the manga out there, due to the chances of manga becoming very popular being very slim. But on the off chance that a manga grows in popularity, the company can now push more expensive versions of the story to the public, with the hope that they will support that one story. In essence, the magazine moves from a general audience to a more specific audience, one that is willing to pay more. Now, the market for collections earns much more than the market for weekly manga magazines. Now that we have looked at the production and marketing of manga, let us now look at its distribution and how copyright law affects this system. Manga is distributed in 2 forms, physically and digitally. Physical manga copies are sold in both primary and secondary markets. The primary market is controlled by the publisher, whereas the secondary market is not controlled by them. Copyright law assists the publisher in controlling the primary market by cancelling out third parties from selling copies without permission of the publisher, who has the right to reproduce, and the manga artist or mangaka, who has the right to control the distribution of his or her work, which is called an exclusive right. However, after the first sale of a manga and its arrival into the secondary market, the publisher loses control. You're allowed to share your manga with your friends, of course, and the publisher should not find issue with this. But issues arise when, firstly, manga cafes provide a large variety of manga for their customers to read. Copyright law does not prevent this. Therefore, the companies try to entice the customer with toys and the like that can only be bought with the manga itself. Secondly, the market for second-hand copies, which are sold for lower prices, is what the companies are most against. They started public campaigns to appeal to the moral compass of fans, similar to what the anime industry does with those who pirate anime. But this does not do much to stop the problem. So it is now accepted that the market for physical copies will remain a leaky market from the perspective of the publishers. The digital distribution of manga helps remove the problem of the secondary market, but comes with its own issues as well. The central issue here is that the digital market is extremely fragmented. You can find manga on platforms like the Kindle Store and Apple Books, but there is not a single platform where readers can access all of their favorite magazines. But the positive of digital magazine manga distribution is that copyright law can adequately control the distribution of the manga because the secondary sale of digital manga is not really possible. Also, while being protected by the digital rights management system, ebooks cannot be resold. As for the digital piracy, the companies rely on cheap digital access to curtail such piracy. For example, access to the Weekly Shonen Jump app only costs $1.99. However, if this fails, they have a useful way of finding infringers who publish the manga online. Now, the more popular and the more successful a manga is, the higher the chances of it transcending the manga format into more than just anime, but video games, light novels, live action films, and more. So once a manga reaches a certain level, it is given an anime adaptation. However, due to the high cost associated with creating an anime, companies have resorted to certain practices to cut costs, such as underpaying their staff. The role of anime, seeing as it reaches a larger audience, is to advertise the manga, as well as earn money, of course. How many of you guys have begun following an anime and upon the completion of the season, thought about reading the manga because you just couldn't get enough of the story? The manga business thrives off of this notion and grows as the anime grows in popularity. This also happens with the introduction of video games. They all strengthen the fan base of a manga, making those ventures worthwhile for all the holders of the rights, as they receive more revenue. The role of copyright law here is to allow control over who can adapt a manga series. The right holder, usually the manga artist, has direct control over who can adapt his series and when they can adapt the series. Timing is key because they want to make sure that the adaptation increases the revenue for the manga. Take Attack on Titan for example. The manga began in 2009 and the anime was released in 2013. With Attack on Titan being a monthly manga, it needed to have enough material to be adapted for a full season, while capitalizing on pulling the interest of many to entice them into following the manga as well. Lastly, with merchandise, the characters of the manga are used to push the sales. It needs to have a strong connection to the anime to maximize its marketing potential. Merchandise is sold with the intention of targeting high-value customers or those willing to pay the most. However, it attacks them in two ways. One, with general items which are sold in large quantities, and two, scarcer items or collectibles. The copyright protection for such items is much more complex than that of manga and anime, therefore it need not be explained at this point. However, I will leave an excerpt in the description explaining it. So we've been talking about manga, and you could see that the publisher has a hand to play in every single stage. However, the publishers do not own the copyright to the manga. That is left to the manga artist. But regardless of this, the publisher remains closely involved in the success of the story. Why? It is because Japanese manga practices and copyright law allow for the interest of the publisher to remain protected. To properly understand this, let's first take a look at the way the comic book industry in the West deals with the relationship between artist and publisher. Here, publishers provide the artist with a sum of money upfront and future payments, and in return receive the full rights for the comic. The manga industry operates differently in that they pay manga artists a fee per page, where the lesser known artists make between 4,000 to 7,000 yen, and the more popular artists earn between 20,000 to 35,000 yen per page. The publishers do this because of how short-lived most manga are. You would not want to pay an upfront fee for a story that may end in 1 year after you pay for it. Rather, you pay the artists as they publish, and once they stop publishing, you stop paying them. This is one reason why publishers are fine with allowing the artist to keep their rights. Other reasons include the fact that the author's name being closely tied to the manga is beneficial because fans gravitate towards the author. There is the possibility of co-authorship, but Japanese practices do not follow this by choice. Thus, those who form part of the manga artist's team, whether it be assistants or editors, help with the story, but for the most part are following the instructions of the artist. Therefore, the artist chooses not to give them authorship. But most importantly, the publisher has an alternative to owning the rights. That is called publisher's right. Here the publishers have the right to publish the artist's work, however it only allows for the publication in magazines. The publisher cannot print the artist's work as a collection without the artist giving them consent, as the artist has the reproduction rights. This does not hurt the publisher because in the first stage of manga production, they are not worried about producing collections as yet. However, this publisher's right hurts the publisher if the manga becomes popular, because then the manga artist does not have the incentive to sell his exclusive rights, giving him stronger negotiating power. Now thinking about this, you see that the artist has all the power, right? He or she can choose to stop working, creating an air of uncertainty. Regardless of this, the publishers trust that the manga artist will still work, so the publisher provides them with the support that they need. However, how can the publishers be sure? The answer lies in the level of control that the publishers have over the artist. Despite the manga artist having ownership of his rights, the publisher still controls the market and in turn controls the author. To make it as a manga artist or gain commercial success, you generally need a publisher. Artists participate in manga competitions set by the publishers. They seek work experience as assistants at publishing companies, and for those who study at university, they are allowed to network with the same publishers. In essence, the publisher's role cannot be reduced. They are the gatekeepers. To add to this, the publisher has people who work closely with the artist while protecting the interests of the publisher. Those are the editors. Editors and artists work closely for years, and the editor is an integral part of the story as they help with its development. Furthermore, the editor has to pass on the licensing offer, and if it is not deemed worthy, the editor will not do so. Therefore, although the publisher does not legally control the copyright work, the close relationship between the publisher and the author substitutes for some of this. In conclusion, I want you guys to leave this video with a much deeper understanding of how the manga industry works. They target various types of customers at different times as a way to maximize their profits. And although the industry has its problems, a positive aspect of the industry is that the manga artists get to keep their rights. Therefore, if your manga is successful, you can reap great benefits. If you found this video interesting, then feel free to subscribe and also leave a like, as it shows YouTube that you guys like my content. As always, this has been Whole Lotta Anime. Have a wonderful day.